Welcome everyone to BG5 Live with myself, Michael Brown, and
Vanessa Naja.
welcome. So Vanessa, it's episode 10. We're still in the heat of the summer here in Boston. It's kind of okay. I bet you in Granada, where Vanessa hails from, it's kind of, what's the weather like where you are?
Well, it's hot and rainy, and today is actually our main carnival day. So the big carnival, it's been carnival weekend all weekend. The big parade is happening shortly, and it is going to go right by my house. So I hope you guys don't hear it, although it might be fun if you do.
It would be kind of fun to be able to hear that. We have a special guest today. She is a dear friend of mine. Her name is Pam Shriver, and she's going to be joining us on the second half of the show. She is one of the early students of BG5, so we'll get a little glimpse of what it was like in the early days studying. So, Vanessa, what's the show about again? Can you remind me? I'm a little forgetful sometimes.
Well, welcome everyone to BG5 Live, which is the show for BG5 and human design professionals, students, and enthusiasts who want a deeper understanding on how to apply human design to business so that they can thrive in their careers and support their clients in doing the same. That is who the show is for. And what we're going to be talking about is the beginnings of BG5.
Early days, kind of fun. So this is Vanessa as our intuitive emotional express builder. So Pam, who our guest, is new to the BG5 language. So for anyone else, if you're coming from the human design world, just a quick snippet of language. So BG5 is the business application for human design, or human design for business. We can say it that simply. And so when the Institute was created in, I forget the exact year, somewhere around 2010 or 11, give or take, then the language is changed to make it more accessible to people in the business world. So if you're really knowledgeable about human design, we have our own language, and it sounds very particular. And what we began to discover in the early days is that it didn't make sense to people in business, and so we were always translating it. And so when the institute was created, we used more business-friendly language. So Pam, our guest, we might have to translate a little bit for you. No worries, you'll pick it up really quick. So here's today's weather. We're looking at the charts we're looking at is the transit for today. So we look at just a couple of different things. So the fourth trait is in the personality sun, the core essence. So that's Vanessa's going to be talking a little bit more about that. So I'm not going to give it away with that. But it's when you look at the next line, the 4.3 or the 49.3. So it's a third line day. So if you're making mistakes, you're bumping into things, you're having slip ups, it's just like it's not a day that's flowing for you. That's probably why. So we have a little bit of sort of trial and error, which when I see those third line days happening, I'm a little like, oh no, I'm gonna do it. So for instance, like when I was signing on today, like totally different room, and Vanessa had to email me. Oh, it was bad. Anyway, so bumping into things. If we make a mistake on the show, no worries. Vanessa, what's happening in the cosmic weather?
Yeah, so we're technically in trait 4 today, but we went over that last time because we always cover all of the transits through the next episode. So we're going to start with trait 29, which goes into transit on August 16th at 1842. That is 6:42 p.m. Eastern Time. And this is part of the sharing abstract experience of direction and love. Trait 29 is perseverance, and this brings the power and available energy from the energy resource or the sacral center in human design to commit to a process without having to know how the process is going to turn out. Because in this particular thematic or circuitry, and having no expectations is really important. So you're always eager to say yes and commit, and you want to be very careful during this transit where and how you commit your energy and make sure to follow your decision-making process or your strategy and authority. If you have this defined in your design, then you probably already are very familiar with this, but especially if this is undefined and all of a sudden you are finding yourself committing to a lot of things, just make sure you're checking in with your decision-making style, your strategy and authority. And this is where when we say yes here, we are committing to the whole cycle and persevering to whatever that cycle will bring, because we want to discover something that can support us in reaching our full potential. If you say yes to the wrong thing here and you're not following your decision-making strategy or strategy and authority, you can get stuck in a cycle that can bring a lot of frustration. So you want to really be careful about committing to the right things. And when you do make those right commitments, you can have this single-minded energy to really move you through whatever comes your way, even those difficult and challenging circumstances. And you may not know until this commitment is actually over where the cycle will take you or what you might discover or experience. So once you say yes, it is really important to let go of the expectations in order to avoid frustration and disappointment, because you're never going to know where the cycle will take you. You definitely want to enjoy the ride. Mike, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, so building on what you're saying, Vanessa, I also think of this in human design. It's, you know, the gate of saying yes. When I do sessions for clients, I also talk about it's also about saying no. So a good no is as powerful as a good yes. And that's like you talked about. So once you commit to something, there's this imperative to see it through to the end. So when you say no from that place within where your decision-making authority is, then you don't have to go through a cycle that you weren't meant to ever do. And so that discernment is really powerful. So saying yes from a correct place and saying no, they can be equally as powerful to one another.
All right, so Mike has a solar return or birthday coming up, and this is actually his conscious core essence, his personality sun in human design. So I am going to let Mike take this one. He knows it very well.
So it's my birthday next week. Woohoo! I'm going to be 22 next week. Just kidding. So trait 59, achieving union. So this is my core essence. It's probably the most powerful aspect of my design, sort of really relate to it. So in BG5, then we talk about achieving union. So it's a natural ability to break through barriers in order to create a connection with others. So if you have the 59, or you have a friend or a partner, a loved one who has the 59, these people do really have this ability to really zoom in and can connect with people in a really powerful way. It's also the 59, I see it as it's very creative. So this is the ability to bond, and that bond is experienced as something warm, intimate, and deeply felt connection. So it's really powerful, this 59. It's like this kind of wrapped up in this warm embrace. It's imperative, it's important for 59s to be able to select the best partner to produce the most vital outcome. Super important for those two. So when we talk about partnerships, we're talking about intimate, romantic, friendship, and also business. So that partnerships can be really important for 59. The 59 is also, and this is a little technical jargon, the quarter of duality. So if you have this in that very top right corner of your charts, you'll notice that it's sort of in that key place. Then you are someone who's designed to fulfill your purpose through relationships. Now, paradoxically, you're not here and you're not designed to bond with everyone. So there's a selectivity to that. So following your decision-making strategy before entering into close bonds can be really important. So this particular quality, this particular energy dynamic, having the 59, it can often lead to confusion or conflict or unproductive business agreements, which can produce lack of material success. So when we talk about this ability to create a really deep sort of connection with people, that's easily misconstrued. And especially if you have the whole particular strength or channel, the whole 59.6. So interestingly, and we'll probably talk about this, is I have the 59, so that's coming out of the sacral or the energy resource. And on the other side is the 6, which is coming out of the solar plexus, the emotional intelligence function. So this forms a connection. So I have the 59, Vanessa, and our guest Pam has the 6. So we have this sort of really powerful connection sort of on the sacral emotional realm. So, Vanessa, I'm going to turn this back over to you. I think we can also begin to introduce Pam, and she can give us a sort of an overview after we discuss it of what the discovery is all about.
All right. So the strength of discovery, and I find this one such a fascinating one. I have a heavily defined design, and I don't have anything in this strength or on this channel. And those are always the ones that fascinate me the most because I'm like, how does this energy work? So with that strength of discovery, there's that perseverance, the commitment, the determination with a potential for new experiences and making new realizations through the perseverance to stay with an experience until it's complete. So remember, this is in that abstract circuit or thematic, the experiencing thematic that moves in cycles. So you do want to be able to go through that entire experience in order to really get the lessons. And there's a potential to really abandon yourself in that experience without expectations. Remember, no expectations are really important here. And the stamina that is required can be accessed here through that gut response or through that sacral response, which then can help you be in the right place, in the right time, with the right people. There's a lot here about making clear commitments in order to gain that satisfaction that you can derive, and also the wisdom that then you'll be able to share through that process of discovery. And being able to really lose yourself in that experience without looking back. It may not necessarily make sense to you while you're living it. It's after the completion, after it's done, that those lessons will come through. So stay with the plan, trust with the plan, make sure you're following your decision-making strategy if you have this strength defined, and allow yourself to be a witness and experience the end of the cycle so that you can then reflect. So there's a big element of discovery here. And I love that this particular strength or channel, they talk about this is, the ability to succeed where others have failed. And then this is not on the slide, but also the converse, like failing where others have succeeded. And I'm really excited to talk to Pam about this. I know people with this strength that, I've talked to them about it and say, yeah, I mean, when it comes to starting new businesses and starting these great, like global entities, like no problem. But if you ask me to put air in my tire, that is like, I have no idea where to even begin. So I'm very excited to hear more about how this shows up for people. And yeah, I'm excited to talk to Pam.
So why don't I introduce Pam? So our guest today, Pam, by the way, is it Pam or Pamela? Do you have a preference?
Generally in conversation, I go by Pam.
Okay, great. So this is Pam. She's an emotional express builder. Pam and I go way back. I can't even remember where we met, but somewhere within the human design ecosystem. So Pam is really interesting in that she's an accountant, a whiz with money. She's amazing at organizing spaces. You can see she's a 5-1, just like Vanessa, shows she's got that super organized, the ability to really research amazingly well. So I'm going to welcome Pam to the show.
Hi. Okay.
So Pam, I was thinking about, why don't you start off by telling us your experience of the 29.6 discovery? So Vanessa gave us a front load, but how have you experienced it within your life?
I want to give a tip first. I don't know what they say, express builder, but I jump around. I have a real strong tip about 59s and 6s because I'm a 6. And a tip I got from Ra a long time ago was listen to the 59s music. If you do not like their music, probably not going to work because it's a really strong bond. And I was just thinking, 59, before you choose that 6, maybe play some music and see how they respond to your music. Because the bond is so strong, the electromagnetic, I would use that term, the genetic continuity of like a bonding. That's what that's a lot about. So anyways, that's just a tip for everybody, because it'll save you. Because and I'm very acoustic in my individual world, so that also plays a role. So you want to know a little bit about how the 2946 works for me? Is that the question?
Yeah, that'd be great. We'd love to hear that.
Yeah, and I when I came to the business side of human design, we actually were coached not to use the traditional terms of human design. So we have to translate what that was like. So for me, and I'll try to speak in the context, there's the individual side of me being a person on my own, in my own aura, and then what happens in a group. But the 29-6, and for me, that it's my Pluto, the 29, so it's about truth. And the 46 is my design sun, so it's design earth. It's the first line. And it's really about what I'm interested in from an individual position. Like, what would interest me, my sacral, my energy to commit to? And you probably know, I think the 46 gate in BG5 is about commitment. So you have to look, you can't look at things just in isolation. So for me, I'm also a solar plex emotional person. I need to take time before I make a decision, because in the moment I will feel, oh yeah, that sounds really great. And then it's like, oh, all of this information comes in later. But when I was asked to be on this and how it works physically for me, and it's taken a long time because it's an unconscious connection to that diamond in the center, that sense of direction, which is very pivotal in groups. That when Mike asked me to do this, I was like, wow, I get a little like, oh yeah, okay, that sounds really interesting to me to do this. And it's exciting and that type of thing. And that gives me my first inkling that I will have the energy to do this, whatever comes out of it, because it is success or failure. A lot of people would say to me growing, even in business, I have I work in business, and they will say, oh, I can't stand the idea of failure. I'm like, what's wrong with failing? It's the only way you can succeed. And this 46, like you guys call it trait has good luck. So anyone that's out there that has this kind of knows that, like, ooh, you've been in some tough situations. You're like, I don't know how I got out of that. But there's this, like, in the world of design and human design, I would say that when you do things, what we say, are kind of more correct for you, it'll go smoother. As express builders, we will have so much additional energy. We'll continue to do things into that level of frustration. And that's the signpost. Frustrations, like, whoa, is anyone around seeing that I am absolutely, completely miserable? So for me, I guess, I have to be careful what I do commit to, and I have to get through it. I have 2 more days of a project that I committed to cover maternity leave for someone, and I'm a CFO and this is a very high level project I haven't done for a while, and I really will not know. And I started this back in February. I will not know of what I've discovered completely until it's over. And that is deeply about not multitasking. Yes, I do other things, but I don't do things at the same time anymore. This is an abstract channel, so you'll hear me kind of jump around, but if you stay with me, or an abstract person, we're pulling all sorts of different things in a non-linear way, because for me, life isn't linear. I don't think it is for anybody. but there will be something that comes out of it. And once I'm done with that project, whatever it is, it could be even gardening or I don't know, just this end of this interview, I will have learned something. And then I have the opportunity for someone to ask me, did you discover something or what did you learn out of that? And my cross is a cross of education. So I'm always educating, you know, and I'm practical. If it's not practical, you're probably not going to be interested in what I have to say. So I will stop there. I think this is one. Oh, actually, let me say one more thing. As you might not be able to tell, but this is a split. This is my core of who I really truly am. As a fifth line, it's very difficult for us to know who we truly are because we've been projected on our entire life. So getting quiet and silent about what can I put into my life. When I go into groups, and this is one of the reasons I studied this science back in the day, was one, this 59-6 was, I wanted to understand why the people that were in my life, love-wise or otherwise. Human design answered that. BG5 and OC16 answered. The second question was like, why, when I go to work, I am like so, involved and come home and just miserable. And it's because in a group or a penta, I think you probably use that languaging, I am completely micromanaged. And you will see all of my energy, most of my energy is outside of a group. So I am designed for one-to-ones. And I have to be very, very, very careful about what projects and work I connect to. Yeah, totally. And when I came across this information, I was like, because I've done business consulting basically my whole career, I was like, oh my God, this is the missing piece. This is why people are so miserable at work. They don't belong there. They don't belong in this type of, configuration. And how can we, shift things? So as you can see, I'm pretty passionate about this because as express builders or builders, we are the workhorses of this planet. And I think the pandemic liberated us all from horrible positions of being, thrown into places we really didn't belong. Because once we're there, it's very hard to get out. So anyways, that was a bit long-winded, but I'll let you guys ask some questions now.
Pam, that was great. You are a natural teacher. I can see that. It's really well. So just to decode a little bit of what Pam's talking about. So there's this sort of core column, goes from the energy resource to identity to communication or sacral, G, or throat. So if you have a channel or a strength in that zone, you are someone who's geared towards being able to work in what Pam was talking about as a penta, which is a small group of 3 to 5 people. So Pam is illustrating the real nuance of her design. She is someone who can play a role in a penta, but like she really expertly described, was she is also has a lot of skills outside of that zone. So yes, people would love to have her on their team, but Pam doesn't feel that same way. That's why she's sort of exhausting, because it's not honoring her individuality to work on a team on a consistent basis. So there's a lot of nuances there. And so if you study or learn about human design / BG5, you will learn those nuances. And you'll begin to take it for granted that you know this amazing information about someone. And people who you share it with will just be absolutely blown away. So I'm guessing that was a huge revelation for Pam when she discovered this is why working in-house is such a miserable experience.
Yeah. So. And it never goes away. That's the thing. It's like, oh, and this is why it's so important as, emotional person to take some time, get some more, I'm a data person. I've got to collect more information before I commit to something, because that's where slavery comes in, because I will get the job done. I have, a very strong ability to get the work done. And with this do you call it ego? The open, I have
Willpower, yeah.
no, no ego circuitry whatsoever. So I actually am a great reflection of money and the, the insanity of tribalness, which is falling apart right now. But for me, but those tribes, those groups, they really want me to infuse some new ideas in it, but it's usually at the cost of my own health and well-being. 46th gate, if you look at the wheel, is at the top of the splenic system, which is this, inward facing triangle on the bottom left-hand side of the chart. And so also this 2946 is all about the body is temple. Like health and wellness are to me way deeper than I think most people. And I was like, why are we so unhealthy because of the way we work? And when you can shift how you work, because for most of us, we have to make a living somehow, and we want to do that where our energy is used appropriately. Challenges, yes. Frustration, no. And anyways, if you have some questions, I have some notes too that I went back and looked at about because this is a fixing channel for small groups, 3 to 5. I also don't do well in large groups. Again, they'd like me to be there, but I'm totally ignored, in and out, in and out. But I am a harmonizing element, so people love it when I'm in the group. And what happens is you lose your personal aura in a group. And this is one of the things that's been the most challenging to maybe teach or explain, except for when, and you may use this when you're teaching, Mike, but that you can take 2 arch enemies that are 1-to-1. And if they're brought into a small group of 3 to 5 people, and it's what we call functional, all these spaces are traits are filled in, they will work like a dream. And they cannot imagine, I hate that person, but it goes away once you're in the group. So that small group has its own life force energy. And and that's kind of where we're moving in the future with Sleeping Phoenix stuff. We're moving into a much more self-sustaining world. But that a lot of times I'm pulled in and I'm like locked in. It's an energetic kind of lock and key situation. And it's like, I would even work. I actually never got my work done until everyone else left. And I would be working, to get my work done because once the group was gone, I could actually do what I needed to do. So, and that leads to, overworking and underpaid and all those types of things. Anyways, yeah. I will let you ask me some questions.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks. So you're really illustrating how deep this knowledge can go, which, if you've been studying BG5 or human design for a while, you can follow along, but your depth, sometimes I think 5-1s, they don't understand how deep they go because they're they've sort of reached that level of being an authority and they sort of live in a deep space. So Pam, when I encountered BG5, it was soon after Ra stopped teaching. It was a couple years, I think, after. So I consider myself like a second generation BG5 teacher / person. But you were there in the earlier days. So can you tell us what it's like how you transitioned from human design, because you've been studying it for a while, into BG5, and what was it like to study both BG5 and OC16 with Ra in those early days?
Yeah, in the way back, we used to listen to real tape, and again, some circumstances happened that so I had been listening to Ra on tape, and his voice is very soothing to me. I didn't know this at the time. I have my 4323 there's 2 of them. They're nodal, which is a background frequency. It's a little different. And I learned once I met Ra in person, and I'll say about that, we share the same nodes, which means we have a trajectory that these people in our lives, we can walk together, and we don't know how long we'll be on that path, but there is a karmic connection for the nodal aspect of our human design. So again, it's very individual. It's very much about structuring. So learning how to communicate, translate what comes out of the mind. As you see, a very powerful emotional system, very powerful throat. So I would always be, this is called genius to freak, blurting out information. So I learned to wait because otherwise it became gibberish to people. Like, what are you talking about? Because I'm abstract and everything. But so I would listen to Ra for and his tapes, and it's like, wow, this stuff's fascinating. Never ever thought I would ever meet him. And lo and behold, I had a situation where some really uprooting of my life. And I was in London, and previously I had, like I said, in 2004, this goes way back, I was looking for a teacher of human design. So I live in Los Angeles area. So I would fly to England to like study with the person at the time, which was Richard Rudd. Well, Richard Rudd was deciding not to be in human design anymore, and brilliant guy. But I was like, oh gosh, what am I going to do? So, but at this original, I heard this thing about Penta, and I was like, 2946, I'll bring that is always in the right place at the right time. It always feels like the wrong time at times, but it's the being in the right place at the right time. It's like, what is this Penta thing? And it took me, I didn't meet Ra until 2006 when I happened to be in London. And I'd heard about this Penta thing again for a couple of years. Emotional people have very long panoramic ability to maintain information. And I was like, oh, there was one space open in this Penta experience that he was doing. He had done one, Ra had done this in New York, I think it was New York. And then I'd met some people that had been, but then when I went to, no, actually, sorry. Yes, I can't remember. Sorry. Anyways, I had this opportunity to meet, to do this Penta experience with Ra, which meant 3 days, I think 3 afternoons. There was a morning session and an afternoon, and I was in a session, and he put together a specific group of people so he could understand how a small group worked. And I had no previous knowledge of Ra on anything. I'd never been to Ibiza, to anything, any of his trainings. And I was late because in London there was big time crowds. And so I had to call him, and his name was Robert Allen originally. So he uses that sometimes, and say, oh, I'm late. And he's like, oh, no choice, but I got there, and I was very nervous. And this happened, I didn't realize until this is later, but this happened every time we met. Full embrace, kiss on the cheeks. And I sat right down next to him, and we started this experiment where he started talking, and this was a Penta. This was about a personal thing, but he was talking because there's a family dynamics to this. And I was there because I was so confused about my career. I was like, what am I going to do? What could I do? And this is, I'm sitting next to this like icon to me, and he's a manifester. And I was like, I felt very nervous in a certain way because I was like, whatever. So I very close to him, and for 3 afternoons, which changed my life. Frequency of a person, and I was sort of on a spiritual path at the time. And when you're with someone that was so pure to who they were, and it's contagious. When you find people that are, and it does, in or out of human design, that really speak their truth. Many of them, I think they call them neurodivergent, on the spectrum, autism, those types of things. They are themselves. Ra was himself, and it was just infectious. And what happens is it starts to fine tune you. It was a very mystical time in it for me, because I was like, he's tuning me, he's fine tuning me, and I don't even know what that means. So at the very end of this, and he was very sweet. He's basically told me everything about my life. And I asked him, like, the very innocent, that's my 25th gate. Well, do you have any ideas for career ideas for me? And he's like, you're cute. That was one of his way of saying, like, you're an idiot. Like, I just told you the whole thing, which is the same thing that any of us that are working in this field, like, realize that we just gave them their life, but they couldn't hear it all. But he said, I've got this business program. It's called BG5. It's really expensive, but you would be ideal for it. And I was like, oh, okay, let me think about it. And I did. I was telling Vanessa and Michael and Sarah ahead of time, I was like, it took me a year to decide. And in my first class, and so anyways, I met Ra and I was with him, and it was, and again, every time we met and left, we embraced. I learned later, no one ever touched him. No one ever, like, directly was with him. But he had told me we share karma. I'm like, and he showed me in this 4323, and I'm like, that's too scary for me to even contemplate. I don't know what that means, because in my life, and it's, as a 5-1, it can be very lonely. We're very unusual folks. Anything as a heretic, in my nature of telling the truth, blurting out the truth, I was often punished for. Here I met someone that was telling me, this is the core of who you are. This is how you make decisions. Live your heresy. I was like, and I still listen to these tapes that we were able to, at the time, this is pre-Zoom, technology of taping was still, cutting edge and stuff. But I was like, oh my gosh, someone had an inkling of who I might really truly be. So a year later, I started studying this. And again, I come back from a very traditional, I'm not a traditional accountant. I'm a CPA in the day. I don't carry that license anymore. But I do, I've been an interim CFO for many years. And that means I go in when there's a crisis. We're, as 5-1s, many people looking for us to save them, save their business, whatever. And I would have these answers, but people couldn't hear them or see them. And not knowing how strong these skills and traits were for me, because I was in these groups where I was micromanaged. No one could hear me. They just couldn't. You were there to work. And so the first class I took with him was in 2007 in the fall. And I was like, oh my God, this is the answer. There's something called gaps in groups. When one of these, there's 12 different connections in the small group area. The larger group is a different scenario. But it was like, oh my God, this is why everything's so freaking dysfunctional in businesses, because my job was to come in and figure this stuff out. And I knew it, but I couldn't put, why was it when this person was here or that person was there, things went smoother or not? And in the old, they call it OG, old days or something. Working with him, we did something on a platform called iVocalize. It was the early stages of what would probably become like a Zoom. We had no video. We just had audio. And when Ra would open up the classroom, and we had people from all over the world, and he would come in and it would be just pure silence for about 15 minutes before the class. And I would be like, again, this is sort of my, I would ask him questions. That wasn't really ever done before. I mean, it wasn't done very much. And he'd answer them. And I was like, huh, okay. And I just kind of knew, I always said, and I had a very strong manifestor in my life. And I always knew when to, I say, put my hand in the bear trap. I mean, they have extremely powerful auras. But in the fortunate part of me being close to several manifestors, when you embrace them, you realize they're marshmallows. That aura is so strong because they're very vulnerable people. The power of what he had to do to get his voice out in the world is this very strong. I also explain it like a turtle, that a big giant tortoise. They're very strong outer shells, but inside they're very, very vulnerable. And I was able to experience that with him. And he was always very generous with me. I felt he's probably brought the most humanitarian information to the world, especially because of the generator population. We're all, because we will work and work and work, no matter really how miserable we are. And I was a star candidate for that. And I just would say that being practical and learning for myself, what skill sets I had, how other people could work. I always infused, well, this is the other thing, because he always really strongly felt that you could have just the BG5 or Penta information, business information on its own. I myself, because I was not someone that had worked with him for 7 years, I'd listened to him for a long time, and I think call it express builder. We jump ahead, and then if we're in the right thing, we'll come back and fill in the steps. That's how I call it a manifesting generator works. We fill in those steps. And so in a way, working with him, I had jumped ahead and I was like, I got to fill in some of this information. And I'm a deep investigator. I'm like, he also told me I have, like, if you count them up, it's like 9 fifth lines and 1 and like 9 first lines, something like that in my design. He's like, you're like putty, I'm so easily influenced. And but as a first line, I really had to go in and get the foundation and understand the human design element. And I am gifted in a certain way that I can look at someone's design in one stretch, like one moment, and kind of pick out what is right for them. But I always am doing it in the context of how they would best work. And I use work as a term, but be in business or not. And let's see. I can tell my energy is a little fading. What else can I do to help you guys? And I did work with him. Well, I'll let you say. I worked through OC16, which is a whole nother animal. But refresh me with a new question, because that will help me kind of feel less nostalgic.
So hearing your firsthand experiences, some of those stories I've never heard before. So that
really? Okay.
Yeah, the way that you two connected was so wonderful. Vanessa, do you have any questions for Pam?
It's really funny though. I have had lots of questions, including, so I counted, you have 8 fifth lines and 8 first lines, which also define your 2946 as well as your 3955, and of course your 12. And so I had all kinds of questions about that, and you answered them all. So no, if you have any questions, they were already answered.
Okay. I will say I was able to go to Ibiza 3 times. They would have an annual event, and then to Toronto. And again, this mysterious energy came, like, no matter who he's talking to or whatever. And it wasn't special. He made everyone that he worked with special. It was a very small group of people. I was always shocked. 51 is the other side. That why aren't there thousands of people here? And but he said he would teach to the few that would teach to the many. And it's taken a long time to really live this and embrace it myself. Um, I knew he was unwell at the end. I would ask him, I could hear in his throat, in his voice, it was like he was not well at the end of before he passed away. And uh and he has a long, I mean, he smoked forever. And this these guys they smoke. I'm not a person that smokes anything, but they would do like a resin of like a marijuana type. It's more than marijuana, I think. But so, you know, and his splenic people, be careful. You don't really know what you're doing to your health. Listen to the 46th here, that when we have an open splenic area, we can actually see the illness in you. And I could see the illness in work, but I could hear it also that he was not well. So, and I would ask him, you know, are you okay? He's like, I'm just working too much, you know. It's tough. It was tough days back in 2008, 9, and 10. You know, it's a very different world that we're in now. But yeah, I feel very fortunate to have, because every time I would go, I would sit close to him because that was that refining frequency of everyone that was there. And other people, other contemporaries of mine would say the same thing. So he wasn't a prophet. He wasn't a guru. I'd been around those. He was just telling the truth. And he could get off topic a little bit, which is kind of interesting. Probably, Mike, when you went back and listened to things, you're like, I thought we were supposed to be talking about this, and then he'd be way over here, and then you wouldn't get that information until you know, there's bits and pieces. You'd have to pick up things. So there was a, you know, my perfect abstract way of finding different pieces of information and pulling them together. But I still think this is, well, let me just bring it into to today. How do I use this information? If that's okay, can I talk about that?
Yeah, that was going to be my last question to you. So I
Yeah,
think
go ahead. Go ahead and ask the question. That'll help me a lot.
so. You've been in human design slash BG5 slash OC16 in the business world, really deep in the business world. So you've seen a lot, but you have this real foundation for design within you. So we have a lot of people passing through the school, and a lot of Vanessa and I get to see from this teacher. Vanessa's been my teaching assistant, but she's also finishing up her studies, where there's this question, how do I make this work as a profession? Would you have any quick suggestions on how our students might do that?
Yeah. Yes. Thanks for asking. Because this was a predicament. And I will say there was one point, it was one of the last classes I think Ra took with BG5. There was about 5 minutes. He's like, oh my gosh, I didn't teach you how to have a business. Being in business, being myself, an amazing troubleshooter, having accounting as the foundation of business, as far as I'm concerned, I don't know how to run my own business. I can pretty much structure everybody else's, but he gave us a very short, like, kind of how to do it. And I was like, and of course he passed away before we could like, ask more questions about that. But and it's taken some time, and it may be more me than other people how to do this, but when I could see the individual side of things, and there's basically, you work on your, if these are some choices, you can work totally by yourself, you can work one-on-one with other people, you can work in small groups or in large groups, and you will have access to different energetics, different skill levels, different leadership styles in each one of those. I came to the conclusion after many years that I needed to know both sides, that this is more for me, is that I needed to understand how the person was individually, then how could they work together. So my what I do now with my current clients, I would say 90% of them, and again, I'm innocent. I'm someone that has my 36 gate, which comes out of my solar plexus, is unconscious. It's, until I do something, you know, I'm very innocent about it, and it's a little scary for me to try things. And although I have a lot of power, I didn't understand how that power worked. And I also have a way of silencing people, which I thought meant they didn't want to know what I had to say. I've learned that that's usually profound, and they've gone on. I'm here to work a lot of times with strangers, one-offs. Still, it can be hard as a person to have this kind of design. So the way I use it now is I like to I work a lot with entrepreneurs and business owners one-to-one, and I like to have their design. I like to have it's too much information, and I like to thank you. I like to know their design, and sometimes I like to wait a little bit to just see because how they operate, and then I like to have their design. And then because in many ways, I think we all live our design to a certain degree, but I use design to pinpoint the original keywords are so, they go right to that person's soul. And when you can point out something to them that they have been looking for their entire lives, and you don't know what that's necessarily going to be, it's a life changer for them and their business. And so I will let them know, I usually ask, is it okay if I, tell you about this or that? But we are drawn, you may talk about fractals. There's certain people that we meet in this life. They're in our lives for a purpose of some sort. We don't know how long they'll be there, but in my life, I'm usually here to liberate someone's spirit, whether that's in their business or the personal life. And they're drawn to me most of the time. Being someone that somewhat reclusive in certain ways, I'm either social or antisocial, which may not come across this way. I'm in my own environment here at home. Going out into the world could be it's like well in groups. It's really hard to meet people. And then you have to come off to the side. So I still feel that this information helps me guide those people that are working with others. When is the best time to pull them aside, be one-on-one with them? When is your, one of my key people I've worked with for 20 some years, I don't know if you use this terminology, triple split. That means 3 of her sections are unconnected. And she has a totally open direction, the G center in the middle. In a meeting, and she's one of the top executive women I've ever worked with. I've been with her for years and years. In a meeting, a large meeting, she comes into that meeting, she can't stay put. And in a triple split person, knowing that triple split, and she's open, but she's ahead of it, like, a huge company. And when she leaves, they're like, she doesn't care about us. What the hell is she leaving for? But her aura is too compressed in a type where she's meeting with all her top managers, which would be like 15 people in a space. So when I explained to her to say, listen, just explain to them, I need to take breaks from time to time, and you can use whatever language you want. I will be right back. I'm not ignoring you, but it becomes too, challenging for me to be in this room with well, not quite like that, but I would tell her, come up with a way to say something before you leave the room and say, I'll be right back. Because they think, the managers are like, why is she leaving? Is she taking a phone call? We've taken our special time to have to drive from Los Angeles, an hour and a half to get to a meeting. And why is she leaving? And she's leaving more than once. Changed everything because everyone can relax. She's not a manifester, but she's acting like one in a certain way. But she needed to let her team know it's too much pressure for me to be in a group all the time. So she had to say. And when you say your own truth about you, people are like, no problem. I work with a lot of, what do you call projectors? What's the terminology you use?
Advisors.
Guides.
And also triple split is synthesizing assimilation.
Okay, and what do you call a projector? A guide of some sort, mentor?
Advisor.
Okay. So with advisors, this is what I tell them. I'm like, one, make sure you have your own office. Okay. Have your own office. And if you're, and do whatever you can to be one-on-one. Very hard for advisors to be one-on-one. They're very much wanting to get their tension out and their information out. So the rest of us builders can be more efficient. Doesn't work very well. But I also tell them, if you're in a group, try to get off to the side in a sofa, put your feet up, relax. You're the people that are supposed to have your feet on the desk. When you act that way, you will not be considered an outcast. They're going to like, wow, they're relaxing. They're not a non-energy type. They're not going to say, why do you have your feet up that way? They will be respected. I know this sounds like very little nuances, but then again, I also like to look at the core of someone, who they are, where their splits are, where they're the top two, traits on each side, where they hook up in their design. So I can say, you need a group to be, your powerful self, or your worst, the success you have in this group, and the reason you keep moving, and you're not successful in any other, company is because of this. These are the ways you can help people understand why they're jumping from one company to another. I also found, and I know I'm long-winded here, and we're going long, that the one thing is, most people in the generation that I studied, we learned it all. I thought everyone needed to know it all. Most people only need to know one thing from me. I don't always know what that is, but I can usually spot it, and they may or may, and usually they're ready to hear it. And if they ask me about it, all the better. Something will come out of that. And I usually try to, wrap it up in a meeting with them, because I don't know if I'll get to see them again. Many of them I do, but I would say that if you're interested in this, there is a huge need for this, bigger than ever. We're going through, as many people know, world is in a lot of flux. And I don't know if you talk about this. We're at the end of what's called the cross of planning. It held everything together, businesses together. The bargain is falling apart. These people that are, I don't know what you call tribal, but these people that are insular together are in free fall. They are terrified. Nothing works the way it used to, but there's so much goodness that's coming. And the sustainability aspect of where we're going, you'll see it, little pods of people, all these startups, and they can use this information just in how to respect each other and how to ask a question. If you can honor someone's true energetic blueprint in, whether you invite them or, ask them questions, give them time. I mean, we will have a whole lot more, I guess, efficiency and productivity in businesses, and hopefully a lot of success. So I'll end it there.
That's a great place to end, Pam. Thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome.
Just to synthesize a little bit what Pam's talking about. So Pam has worked with, a number of different clients, some of them really high level with their own companies. So she's had a lot of experience. And what I took from what you said, Pam, is that the knowledge is so powerful. We don't exactly know which piece will be so powerful for our clients, but it's almost as if less is more. What we think is just a small micro part of their design, like your illustration for your advisor clients, running the company, her just walking out of the meeting had a big impact. But that's just one aspect of her design. You sort of illustrating that, bringing it to life, was really powerful. So another thing that I took from what you said, that I get the sense that for a lot of people, they don't want to learn design. They don't want to learn all of it. We may give them a session, but working with people over time, little bit experiments. So that's really powerful. Pam,
And can I
ahead.
say one more thing? Because one of the other key things is to explain why they're continuously frustrated with a certain type of person. And you can explain to them about, I use this example. I've got blue eyes, you've got brown eyes. You're asking me brown eye questions. I will never have brown-eyed answer for you. I only have blue-eye answers. And that sounds maybe strange, but when and it's again, the dynamics that they have in their families. Business owners have families that don't understand why they're so connected at work and maybe not at home. It's a very different situation. But if you can help people, understand why that same person is always, provoking them or triggering them, and you can realize it's a part of their nature that's, you may be able to work around it, but let's not try to change them. Let's embrace what they can do. And that is one of the things that happens in small groups. When there's what we call a gap, or one of these traits is missing, focuses on the trait. And you can say, hey, we're all focusing on that trait instead of what we need to do. There's a million things I could tell you, but it's very practical information. And you can see I rarely use human design terminology. There is a way you can translate this by using the person, and you have to practice. And they'll tell you if they don't understand what you're doing. Anyway, sorry, Mike, we're gonna wrap up.
Thank you, Pam. So if someone wants to connect with you, how can they do that?
Through my website is actually, if you link there's my free ebook, which combines a lot. I work with a lot of people about money and the conditioning they've had around money, but I kind of am a sleuth how I do it. We get your accounting up to date, and money seems to bring up every kind of issue you have in every part of your life. But this link here or you can go to PamelaJShriver.com. My ebook link is on the very bottom right. You guys have all heard these types of things. I have another link at the sort of the top of the page, but it would be nice to, if you click there, you can get my ebook. You should be able to. I think Mercury's retrograde, but you can find out a little bit how I incorporate human design. And then I will have your email address. I am not someone that is pouncing on you with information. And otherwise you can, do hello@PamelaJShriver.com if you'd like to, reach out in some way. I want to thank you. This has been great. It's been fun. I don't get to talk this language very much with people, but it's very fun to be here. And again, I love working in this world, and I am been shifting to I have a little podcast I started a while ago, and it's going to be back. It's called The Money Mystic. And in my world, everybody, from as long as I can remember, way before human design, people would ask me about money questions. I'm like, what are you asking me about that for? I'm a very much person that can reflect back your money issues to you in a simple way. So does that help?
Yeah, thank you, Pam. It was great having you.
Okay.
Vanessa, anything else before we sign off for today?
Oh, it was so good to have you. I know I'm definitely going to be re-listening to this. There's just so many nuggets in there that I want to rehear. So yeah, thank you so much for being here, Pam. This is really awesome.
Okay. I loved it. I mean, it's great. And I'm so excited you guys are doing this. I have to say, I didn't know really too much about it. And it's interesting, I go way back with Mike. So I've always wanted to work with Mike in different ways, and we have. But This is I'm very excited. Thank you for inviting me here today. It's been a really a pleasure.
It was our pleasure too. So Pam, thank you so much.
Okay.
We might drag you back on the show some other
Okay.
point.
That'll be great. Okay.
Bye for now.
See ya.